Thank you, Nitin, very much for your time today, and welcome to the Leadership Equation podcast. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot to cover, Nitin. So let me first get started with the section, which is really, what we're talking about, that what makes HUL, the foundational beliefs that you talked about, and what sort of these beliefs over a period of, let's say, multiple decades, what truly makes HUL more than a company that we, have come to sort of admire over these decades. So let's start with that, maybe.
Okay. Um, that's a big question. And inevitably, this company being what it is today is a result of many things that it has done, many people and many generations of leaders who have done a few things consistently. I'm going to give you my perspective on why I think HUL has become the company that it has. I guess we must first just acknowledge the benefit of having come here early.
Right.
I think the linkages between Britain and India meant that UK business started trading and sending their goods to India way back. I think 1888 were the first set of products which came into Calcutta. I think Trilite came in a few years later. Lifebuoy came in. So
Right.
That helped. But there was something much more than that. I think if you go back over the last 100-odd years, you would notice that this company has displayed an incredible commitment to its long-term future in India and of India. When Unilever set up its subsidiaries here, that was in the 1930s. In 1931, the first one, 1933 after that, in 35, all of them came together to form Hindustan Unilever, it was called,
Right.
in 1956.
Right.
Now, in those days, I don't think anyone in the world would have thought about India as being a massive market and an opportunity. In fact, there were people living here, but there was hardly any market.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
And at that moment, for someone to believe that this can be a very significant business opportunity for us over the next many decades is quite something. And believing that is one aspect, but doing the things which are required to translate that into a real opportunity is what I mean by commitment. I'll give you just a few examples.
Right.
You want to set up a business in the country, and it would have been clear to anyone that for a country like India, with its scale, with its complexity, its diversity, its languages, it's difficult to have run it with expatriates coming here all the time. So you needed Indians.
Right.
But ready Indian talent wasn't available. So what do? The leaders in those days then went out to scout for raw talent which they would recruit and then train and then develop. And it might seem extraordinary that all of this started in 1940 or so.
Right. Right. Way before
Way
the
before.
the B schools and the
In fact, none of them existed.
yeah.
So none of those existed at that point in time.
Right.
But to find talent from educational institutes elsewhere, train them within, such that by 1961, this company had its first Indian chairman. Mr. Tandon became the chairman of Hindustan Unilever in 1961. I call that extraordinary because there are many companies who, till a few years ago, would wonder whether you could have an Indian person out here,
Absolutely.
etc. And since 1961, but for a 2-year period or so in between, we've had Indians leading this company all along.
Yeah.
And so that's just one example of what I mean by
Yeah.
long-term commitment.
Yeah.
If I was to give you a second example, is like I said, markets didn't exist. Markets had to be created. And that requires very many unique sets of capabilities that need to be built. So all the categories that we see and we take for granted today, most of them were actually created
Yeah.
by Hindustan Unilever, doing the things that were required. So let's take Vanaspati or Dalda, the brand that we knew.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't exist. And it wasn't easy to sell Vanaspati because people were accustomed to making pakoras in desi ghee, and suddenly you have this Vanaspati. And it required teams of people going in vans, village to village, making samosas, getting people to taste them, and getting people to believe that it is possible. So that's just one example, but of For example, creating the laundry powders or detergent powders as we know this. Bucket wash didn't exist as a habit. People use soap. How do you go and educate people to do this? So that's one aspect.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, you needed to build capabilities. You needed an incredible supply chain because you needed to get your cost structures right. You required an incredible distribution network because India lived in its villages and you had to access those places. Often roads didn't exist. So you can imagine the effort which went in order to create these markets over a period of time. So that, in my view, would probably be the first important pillar, but real commitment to the long term.
Yeah.
I guess in this period, doing business in India has not always been easy.
Yeah.
And emerging markets are never for the faint-hearted. Often people would say 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes there's 1 step forward, 2 step back. To see through that period also required that sort of commitment.
You take that 90s period, the whole balance of payments, the burden on the exchequer, and building an organization that never wanted to do it. And I guess if you could also go one level deeper on this thing that, what was good for India first was good for it. Just, if you were to go deeper.
The second area that I would talk about is what you touch upon, which is almost this conviction and belief that you can't operate in a society, a successful business, without being cognizant of and without aligning with the issues of society, the issues facing the nation. So you have to embrace those. You have to find solutions for those. And one of the things this company always believed, that it is possible. It is possible to find solutions which will be good for society, good for the nation, and good for your business. That these two don't have to be
Separate.
at odds with each other.
Yeah.
So years later, we coined the phrase, if it's good for India, it will be good for HUL. And it is our job to find those strategies which will make this true. So I'll give you, since you touched upon the balance of trade, I'd probably go even before that. And I'm not sure whether you would even remember, you're probably not old enough. But in the 70s, there was the FERA and the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, which came in. And at that moment, given the challenges that we had with foreign exchange, etc., the government, the regulation was that foreign entities need to dilute their holdings and bring them down to 40%. And companies like ours, that's what would apply. But there was one clause in that if you did things which were in the national interest, and if you did things which were high-tech, which the country needed, and if you generated export earnings and weren't a burden on the exchequer, you could retain 51%.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here was a company making soap.
Right.
Difficult to have argued that making
It will
soap
fulfill those criteria. Yeah.
high-tech in this space. What did the company do? He says, this is what the country needs. So the company got into specialty chemicals, high-tech space. It got into agri-products like seeds and fertilizers, national interest. Yep. And by doing this, it helped explain that our presence is in the interest of the nation. The other things that it started doing is saying if foreign exchange is such an issue, we can never be a burden on the exchequer. So we must export more than we need the exchange to import some of these things. So what happened? First, we had set up an R&D center, which is, by the way, another example of bold thinking and ahead of its time. In 1967, I think the first R&D center was set up here. It was India's first private sector R&D center. It probably also might have been, I'm not sure, Unilever's first, or certainly amongst the first centers outside of the headquarters.
Wow.
And a program started to drive import substitution, find local ingredients, which could substitute the expensive imports we had.
Yeah.
And so nobody had made soap using what we now called minor oils. No one in the world knew how to make them. But the oils which we were importing weren't made out here. So we had to find seeds and oils with which we could start making soap here to reduce the import dependence. Just an example, a breakthrough through the scientists out here.
Yeah.
Second, HLL got into an export business. Now, you couldn't export soap and detergent easily because Unilever was present everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
So what do?
Yeah.
Find things which are country competitive advantage which you can export to the world. So we started exporting carpets. We started exporting leather. We started exporting shrimp and marine products. Yeah. Someone would say, what's the linkage to the core? And
Yeah.
no linkage to the core. But the recognition that if we want to operate in this country and this is what the country needs, we will do this. So that's how we got into exports. That's how we became not dependent on foreign exchange. And the combination of these things allowed us to retain that 51%. Example of if it's good for India.
Yeah.
Much later in the 90s, the government wanted the development of rural India. So we said, and we would be happy to go there, and they were willing to give incentives. So we were amongst the first companies which went and set up factories in what were called backward locations, where nothing existed. The only thing existed was the factory that we would go and set up. But because we went there, the ecosystem around that would start getting developed. Suppliers would come in, packaging material, others, and that's how the development happened. So whether it is Chindwara or Urai or Sumerpur, many of them were dacoit infested. Those regions weren't safe.
Right.
Or Dumduma in Assam, which he went to. So these are just a few examples of how the company kept doing things which were in the national interest, or at times doing things which is good for society, but also good for business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
That alignment and that marriage of, yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want this to appear as if these were stories of the old. Even more recently, if you were to see, in 2000, a very creative business model came up which we called Project Shakti, which was all about driving women's empowerment. And there was a lot of work done to show that if you could drive women's empowerment, you could make a massive difference to society at large. But how do you do that? Because, so we said, we will go to small villages, we will identify women, we will train them to do business. They will become our advocates. They might go door to door. They might drive education in the village, etc.
Right.
And we will give them our products, we will train them, and they will make an income. They will make an earning out of that.
Right.
What started off as a small pilot in 2000, today has 200,000 Shakti people across the country. It contributes a sizable part. So while this contributed to women's empowerment, and that's how it started, it wasn't just that. It wasn't just philanthropy.
Yeah.
The fact that we had a champion and an advocate in far-flung places where there were often no road access gave us privileged access, privileged distribution, and benefited our business.
Right.
Yeah. So another example of good for society,
Good for the company.
business.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that many of us who have, like I was saying previously, long admired how, let's say, from HUL all the way to HLL now, and its existence as a brand, the whole concept, and you would have seen it very closely, and I'll come to your role as a chief people officer in a bit, but this the quality of talent, the quality of leaders that the organization has always had. Nitin, it'll be great if you could sort of talk a little about that.
I will,
Yeah.
because in some ways I touched upon two of the reasons we've been successful,
Yeah.
which is a real commitment to the long term
Yeah.
and a belief that if it's good for India, it will
It
be
is
good
good
for
for the
us,
country.
and aligning with national and societal interests. These were the two.
Yeah.
But they were underpinned by two core aspects. One is around an obsession with talent, and second is about creating the culture which will be right for us in this setup. Yeah? So talent and culture are the underpinnings and the foundation of everything that we've done. And when it comes to talent, The very fact that in 1940 or so, we went around scouting college to identify people, the brightest kids, raw talent, and then train them,
Yeah.
was just a reflection of how we thought about it. In the company, it's been a near obsession of wanting to be an employer of choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our ability to attract the finest and the brightest people to come and work for us over the years, that's really what has helped us. And having recruited them, recruiting is one aspect, then providing them the environment,
Yeah.
the training, the development, the stretch, the intellectual challenge.
Yeah.
Many people think, oh, your business, you're not sending a rocket to the moon.
Yeah.
You're making soap and soup, as someone would call it. And yet, fine minds finding a way to solve real consumer problems through everyday products requires a fair amount of intellect, a fair amount of ingenuity,
Yeah.
and high quality people.
Yeah.
So we've been obsessed with that. And I remember there was one year in the early 2000s when we weren't the employer of choice. We missed it. We weren't number one. I think we might have been 3 or something like that in that period. All hell broke loose, saying, how can that happen? What have we got wrong? How do we get these insights? How do we fix this? That's the manner in which this company has looked at it. And when we said employer of choice, it wasn't just within FMCG. We wanted to be employer of choice across industries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
And then in training, again, very far-sighted. You see, we got great people, but let's face it, most of the people who had education came from our cities, often large cities, but India lived in its villages. So we may have been Indians, but how much did we really understand about the pains, about the challenges, the lives of people in rural India?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so our training program required everyone out there in the field working. You could be a gold medalist from wherever, but you would go into the villages, into this, selling product, interacting with retailers months on end
Right.
till you got this. You had a program in Eta where you had to go and live there. Live for 6 to 8 weeks with a villager with no objective about selling products or anything to do with the company. Simply live in that village,
Yeah.
understand their lives, and if you can make a difference to that village using your intellect, using your knowledge, working with government, seeing what schemes exist, if you can get a road to the village, if you can get some electricity line got to the village, if you can solve their water problems, if you can get some smokeless chulas, help them in animal husbandry, that is what you did for 8 weeks. Yeah. I remember when I was at training, if there was any other stint, could be cut short. Yeah. But if you didn't go to the village and live there, oh, God forbid if anyone sent you in front of the chairman, you wouldn't be confirmed, but the person who did this would also be in trouble.
That's how seriously it was
It
taken.
was, yeah. I share these stories because this gives you a sense of how committed we were to these, and that's how organizations get built. So that's the talent piece. And then there's about culture. And culture, there are many ways you can define it, values that we talk about. I don't want to overcomplicate it, but there was a deep commitment to meritocracy, real meritocracy. There was a deep commitment to human values of caring. And there was a deep commitment to integrity. Now, when I say this, every company would use terms like this.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what's different?
Yeah.
Who says we don't want to run a business in a fair and honest manner? And I heard it and I believed it, but it all came home to me when I experienced it. I'll give you an example. It was 1996.
Yeah.
I had just been made I was the branch manager or regional manager, as it was called, in Chennai.
Chennai.
And within months of my going there, one state of the 4 states at that time, Kerala, he had a boycott. And the entire trade boycotted us. So business came down to zero. So, of course, I was under enormous pressure. The chairman of the board company would call up every other week or every week and say this. And I think in a second call or third call, it was Mr. Dadi Seth. He realized that when he calls me every week, it might be adding to my pressure.
Mm, mm.
And he said something to me at that stage, Nitin, I want you to know, I'm calling you up only to let you know that you have our full support. And I'm calling you up today to let you know that you should never come under pressure to do anything that you don't believe in and it is not right. Hmm? So I heard him and I said, it's all very well to say. Till he said the next line. He says, if we have to leave the state and not do business, we will leave it. But we will not compromise on what we believe is right.
Amazing.
Now, at that one moment,
Yeah.
yeah, the test of that value,
Yeah.
I realized
Yeah.
that we mean this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd heard stories earlier, and they would have been true, but I hadn't experienced them. I'd heard stories like a factory had been put up, crores had been invested behind that factory, but we weren't getting the license to start operating because the electrical connection wasn't being given. Now, it might have all simply meant a few hundred rupees of greasing someone's palms. And that's what someone expected. But we wouldn't do it. And we wouldn't do it, and this capital would lie idle for a few months. And everyone would say, what a stupid commercial decision.
Right.
But it wasn't stupid. It was acts like that which establish that there is a boundary that we draw. There are things that we do and things that we don't.
And
Yeah.
Nitin, just to interject, I think, in those moments is when, culture really shapes up. I can only imagine, let's say, a young leader like you managing the region. It just not is a individual level impact, but these scenarios, these stands or decisions, they travel as well, right? So people get to see that when there was a constraint in a event, how did we behave? And those are the moments in which these fundamental culture shapes up.
You
Is that
could not have said it better. Yeah. Because when this happened, I used to travel to Kerala and I told the team in Kerala they were under enormous pressure. Yeah, they couldn't go out in the market. There were threats, people coming to, if they tried to go out and sell things,
Yeah.
out the people. And at that moment, when I said this to the team, you should have seen how they felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here were guys saying, if that's what it is, we are going to be there. They are to be on the street.
Yeah.
Because everyone feels proud because they felt that the cause that we were working, the support that we had, the belief system it was had
Yeah.
was in place. So, yeah.
On this topic itself, Nitin, I just want to get your thoughts that as a theme, we love to have a conversation with leaders who have in some way shaped and built, the journeys of organizations that have endured the test of time, Unilever being one for sure. But when you compare that to the half-life of companies or the full life of companies today that we see, many of them are built for causes opposite of making it, endure the test of time. Forget about that. Things like valuation, things like exit. If you look at the vocab, as you sum this up, when you look back at this phenomenal journey, and we'll go into that section as a segue, what would your reco thought be for, let's say, a young founder who's listening into this, these just as a point of record.
So, first, look, times are different, context is different. So, I don't want to compare one versus the other, but I want to make a different point.
Yeah.
Everything that I've described is not an alternative to being a high performance company. Yeah. You cannot say, I'm a caring company, I have a lot of integrity, and this thing, but I am a mediocre results.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
No one respects a laggard. Yeah. You have to be a high performing company to be respected. I remember in the early 2000s when we had a certain vision for us and say, what do we want to be? And we had called out a line saying, we want to earn the love and respect of every Indian. And every single word there had a very specific meaning. Love and respect wasn't used interchangeably.
It is in a sequence.
Yeah. So respect comes when you perform. Nobody respects a laggard, like you said.
Mm.
Yeah. But you could be respected and not loved. Love comes based on how you do things, how you engage, how do you mean, what do you mean to society? You could be loved but not respected. You could be respected, not loved.
Yeah.
We wanted to be loved and respected. That was one. We made a second comment. We said we want to earn. The word earn had meaning. It is not our birthright. Just because we've succeeded for the last 70 years doesn't mean we will succeed for the next.
Right.
Every year we have to earn your love and respect.
Right.
Yeah. And then every Indian, that was a choice. So some people can say we serve the mass market, some people can say we serve the premium consumer. Our aspiration, given our size and scale, was to serve every Indian. So this wasn't, no word here was
Yeah,
just
by
casual.
by
Yeah,
accident
every
or-
single word.
Yeah.
And that translated into many things that we aspire to do. So where I want to come to is I want people to realize that we can't talk about, oh, I do things in a fair manner, I do things nicely, I'm a caring person. Therefore, I have the pass, I have a license to underperform. No, you don't. Hmm?
That-
No, you don't.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is fundamental.
You have to do both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that combination of
Correct.
love and respect. Respect is performance. Love is how you do things.
Do things.
Yeah, it's beautifully. And when I now go back to, sort of processing that word called earn, it almost keeps you that humility, all of that stuff comes in along with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting way of defining. Thank you very much for that, Nitin.